Fasting, intermittent fasting, 48-hour fasting, like week-long fasting. Are we crazy? Why are we not eating? That's a question I get asked so often. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you eating? Hello, Wellness Warriors. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat. We do get a lot of questions and comments like in our videos about fasting, and I thought it would be important like to talk about that this week. So just to get back to the basics and why are they benefits and how should we do it and what are the roadblocks. So we're going to cover that. First of all, what is fasting?
Okay, so what's fasting, first and foremost? Any period of time that you're not eating theoretically could be considered fasting if you're not processing food. So I'm going to add that there because
Okay.
I think that basically when I finish eating, my body's processing food. Like I'm not actually going to be hungry at that point in time. It's not a possibility for me to be hungry as I just finished eating. I'm processing food. So once you get past the point where your body's processing the food and you're before the next meal, that period of time you could consider fasting. So now how long that period of time is depends on the kind of foods that you tend to eat. So for people doing a standard American, standard Canadian diet, generally speaking, there's a hunger that will come to you approximately 3 to
Yeah.
4 hours after you've eaten. Interestingly enough, though, how long does it take food to get through the system, right?
More than that.
It takes about it takes about four-ish hours, right? So one of the funny things is that on a standard American, standard Canadian diet, you're eating again before your body has even used that energy, and you're eating again. Versus, if you're doing some kind of low carb, keto style, carnivore style lifestyle, more often than not, people can go 12, 14, 16 hours before they feel hungry. And why is that happening? Well, because carbohydrates get taken out of your bloodstream very quickly, but carbohydrates are energy. And because carbohydrates get taken out of the bloodstream so quickly, you end up needing to replace that energy. So you get hungry again. Yeah, so basically a fast is the period of time that you're not eating where your body is not processing food. If I'm understanding that correctly.
Okay. So I think we agree that like the period of time between breakfast and lunch and dinner, you cannot consider that a fast, even though you didn't have a snack, right? Like
It's too short.
it's too short.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
but
part of the crazy that we're constantly feeding ourselves on top of food.
but okay, we're talking about the hunger signal on a standard American, standard Canadian diet. At that point, are you really hungry, or is just like your insulin that got triggered that's sending you signal that you want more? Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, is it possible to fast on a standard American diet?
So the more fat you have on your body, the more leptin and ghrelin so these other hormones that control your food get turned on and off. And so yes, you're right. Like if you the part of the problem is that you eat carbohydrates, as I said, and then that sugar gets put away. But then you have these other hormones as well that are pushing for you to get more food. Your dopamine and your brain is saying, oh, the sugar's gone, get more sugar. You're constantly being pushed towards eating because you're going to eat sugar, right? And so this is where it becomes difficult because on a standard diet, you're often eating because your body is pushing you to eat, even though you have energy and you're not actually hungry.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily even eat high quality protein. So it's not like it's for building blocks. Sometimes you end up eating chips. What building block is that? Sometimes you end up eating chocolate bars. What building block is that? So it's not even like you're actually getting building blocks in. You're just eating to eat.
Yeah, it's more your addiction
and
that's
getting a bit of energy.
that-
Because you are getting energy, sugar. So
Yeah,
you're getting
yeah,
energy.
yeah. It's more your addiction that's talking than a real hunger.
Yes.
I think it's important to mention that lowering calories and fasting are not the same, right? To be considered a fast, there is no food involved in that process. Like, because if you have calories in, even though if it's a small amount, you're still going to process the energy out of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I know that there have been conversations about fat fasting, water fasting, and like, so what's the difference? And so here's the thing. some people allow fat in their fast because when you ingest fat, so now we're talking about there's no protein
Mm,
associated with this fat. We're just talking about true fat. So
mm,
some kind of coconut oil, uh, butter, like, oh, is there
but
protein in butter?
yeah, yeah, I think so.
But coconut oil or
Mm,
some kind of just fat substance. Part of the reason that some people allow that kind of fast, and like so doing that in quotation marks, is technically it really isn't because
fast.
there's energy coming in.
Mm,
But the reason that they do this is because they're not actually trying to fast.
okay,
They're trying to elongate the time between meals.
okay,
And
okay.
why are they doing that is because they're trying to lose weight.
Okay, that's important because if in your mind you're doing a 16/8 or a 24, but you have a coffee with cream in the morning, you in theory you broke your fast. You get some energy,
Not to
right?
mention that if you have cream in it, there's probably some carbs in there too. So yes.
Okay. But you were talking about water fast, like water, there's no fat, there's
Yeah.
no protein, so that's fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's
And
not
if
the
you
same
have
as
black coffee, I believe that's also fine
okay,
because there's no energy in
there's no
there,
energy. Okay.
right? But here's the thing. Again, it's like, what's your goal? And one of the things that I try to talk about is that like fasting has such amazing benefits because it helps your body to clean up, right? So you're going to recycle proteins that are broken, etc., kind of use them to like get them back in the system in a good way. You're going to encourage
Mm,
apoptosis, which is the recycling of cells, so the killing off to rebuild of cells and stuff. So there's a lot of positives that happen when you fast. You're going to have more human growth hormone, which again encourages your body to grow and create new muscle and new tissues and etc. All the benefits that you get out of actually fasting that have nothing to do with weight loss,
mm,
right? Now, technically, are you going to lose weight if you fast? You can, right? Like one of the things that is kind of funny to me is especially when I was fasting like every single weekend, my weight was able to stay stable. And the question is how was I able to do that,
mm,
right? And it's that weird thing where if you don't have weight to lose and you're eating appropriately at all the other period of time that you're eating, like fasting for 48 hours is not going to cause you to drop weight,
drop a pound or two.
right? What gets people in trouble, my fear, when they fast for weight loss is that you push yourself beyond what makes sense. Like, I remember trying to do a week long fast. And the reason I was doing the week long fast was for health. It's like give my body a good long period of time to clean up. And I never made it to the week. And I tried it more than once. And I never made it to the week. Well, why? Well, first and foremost, I was at goal weight. So my body would not allow me to go that far down.
Mm,
Right? I would start, I'd feel great, and I'd be fasting, and it's amazing. As a matter of fact, I'm fasting right now. I haven't eaten since yesterday. I don't remember what time. So, like, this is more than 40. I'm getting into my 48 hours in a few hours and feeling great and going along and whatever. And it was terrific. Yay. And guess what? Like, by day 4 or 5, I think it was, I think I made it 5 days. It's like, oh, the headache started to happen.
mm,
And I don't feel, I'm feeling so, it's like, why? Because my body is not going to let me just keep going and going and going. And it was unnecessary,
mm.
right? Like there is a reality that your body will absolutely let you do something that's healthy for it. And so there's cleanup to do and you're going to feel amazing and you're going to have energy and all of that great good stuff. But when it gets to the point where your body is like, okay, hey, hello, we cleaned up enough, it's going to push you to eat. So I worry for people who fast for weight loss because my concern is that they are going to keep pushing and then you risk refeeding syndrome, you
Mm.
risk your body like not allow like just reacting to food afterwards and possibly pushing you to overeat. One thing that I know for myself is that whenever I reintroduce food, I still eat to satiation and I still like count all of my carbohydrates and I make sure that I make a good meal, a lighter meal because I haven't eaten in a few days, but like a good meal. So again, fasting
Okay.
for weight loss,
Okay.
oof,
So
makes me
fasting
nervous.
okay. So fasting is more like a health tool than a weight loss tool. Shall
That's
we
the
agree
way
on
that
that?
I
Yeah.
like to see it.
Yeah.
I do know that there's a lot of people on the standard American diet who fast for weight loss.
Mm.
I also see that those people struggle a lot.
Yeah, because and I'm cutting you off because like on a standard American diet, you spike your insulin all the time, and you trigger those hunger feelings, and that makes it much harder to fast, that's for sure, than if you're doing a keto lifestyle. Okay, let me go back a little bit, because what would you say is the ideal amount of time that let's say your body ended up processed food and you don't have any food to process and you start actually fasting for real? Like how many hours? 4?
So the ideal time frame. So this is again taking what doctors have said into consideration. I'm trying to remember now because you sprung this topic on me. But so the what I remember is that they say that if once you get to like 16 hours, you're starting to be in that, like your body's starting to do a lot of good internal cleanup,
Okay, 16.
and getting to like 24. And now so 16 to 24, which, so theoretically speaking, then if you're doing 16 to 24, that means that you actually would have fasted. So the last meal would have been like 18 hours ago, right? If you want to get 16 hours of,
Okay.
right? So somewhere between 18, 20 hours ago,
Okay.
right? So like you're always having to add the time it takes your body to process that food. So 16 hours is when they say you start to get that good like stuff going on, going to 24. But then they
Okay.
say that after 48 you start having diminishing returns. So
Okay.
from 48 to 72 to like a week. So like it's like as you go forward you start to get diminishing returns.
Okay.
So like a good story and why I was often doing 48 hours is because it's a nice space where you're doing something good for yourself,
Okay.
but it's not too.
When you have a full, like, if you do 48 hours, you have a full 30, 34, even like a 16, yeah, 30 hours, 32 hours, if my math is
Well,
good.
you're doing more than
That
that.
like,
If you do 48
what if you
hours, you've got like a good
30, 32 plus
40-ish
16,
40-ish
48. Yeah.
hours where you
Okay.
actually didn't have any, because by the
Okay.
time you're processed, right? So you have a good
Okay.
44 hours of
Okay.
fasting.
So types of intermittent fasting, then we often hear the basic, I think 16-8. You don't really get any benefits of doing like 16-8 would be like 2 meals a day. It's it's good, but not, you don't get the benefits of like that 4 hours. For example, if you did a 24, if you have a 4 hours feeding window, then you would have a four
Yeah, so you
hours
would have
that your
had
body would clean.
you 16-8
Hmm.
means that you actually have 12 hours of fasting,
Okay.
right? Because you have that 4 hours your body's processing. So most people are doing a 16-8. I would encourage a 24,
Okay.
right? Because then if you do 24, you're actually getting the 16 hours of fasting because you have to always add in that little 4 hours that the food is processing.
Okay.
You're not
Okay.
actually
Okay.
fasting because, okay, here's the thing that maybe I didn't say before that I should have said. In order for your body to be fasting, it needs to have the resources to pay attention to and repair. If
Okay.
you are processing food, that's energy intensive. Your body is not repairing. It's
Okay.
not so this is why the whole fasting is beneficial to us, because while we're not processing food, our body can clean up.
Okay.
Apoptosis can happen. All those internal things that needs to be fixed can be fixed. So when we do a 16-8, you've given your body 12 hours of cleanup. Now, there's still some cleanup happening there. It's not to say there's zero, but doctors say the true benefits happen when you get to 16 hours,
Okay.
right? So technically doing a 24, so 20 hours fasting, 4-hour eating window, better because then right, even better doing one meal a day,
Yeah.
right? Because then you've got, like I said, you've got 24, so you've got 20
Mhm.
hours of fasting happening.
Mhm.
If you do 48, you've got 44 hours of fasting. So like,
Okay.
like,
So processing a meal, it takes our body 4 hours. That's why maybe I was like, I didn't
yeah,
get like before. Okay,
yeah.
processing a meal takes 4 hours. So if you do 3 meals per day, there is going to be some fasting happening during the night. Basically, if you finished your supper, okay, I understand why like it's so bad eating after 6, for example. Like even the nutritionists out there like will like recommend like against that, eating like late at night. So basically, if you do 3 meals a day, you finished your supper or your dinner at 6 p.m. Around 10, 11, you should start like the cleaning process until like the next morning.
Mhm.
But the longer, the better.
So like, so say let's say 10 p.m. and let's say next morning you have breakfast somewhere around 8.
Yeah,
So from 10 to 8 is how many hours?
like 12, 10 hours.
So yeah, so 10 p.m. and the next morning around 8 you're gonna eat. So that's 10
10
hours.
hours. Okay.
But you're like, your body's like just getting heated up, right? Just getting
Yeah.
started, and you're gonna give it food
Okay.
again. So this is why a lot of the doctors say if you can get 16 hours in, like that's a really good like period of
Okay.
time of like cleaning up, and of course the longer the better.
Okay.
So like, when you're trying to think about, well, what am I doing to help myself? The shorter the feeding window,
Okay.
That's the other reason that I talk about, like, if you're going to do 2 meals, rather than do breakfast supper, which a lot of people do, they do breakfast supper,
Hmm. Yeah.
do breakfast lunch or lunch
Or lunch
supper,
supper. Yeah.
right? Because the closer you have those meals together, the longer that window of fasting is.
Yeah. And be aware, if you get to eating one meal per day and you're at work and you're with friends and you're with family, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy. And this has like happened to me like a lot of time. When you don't have lunch, when you go out to have lunch, you just have a glass of water or something like that. People are gonna look at you like you're crazy, but it's totally doable because you eat most of your energy, or I will say calories, but your energy in one meal. So, for example, if your body is fine with 1,500 calories or 17 or 2,000 calories, if you do one meal a day, you try to have most of those calories in one meal. You're not spreading it out like it's not because you have one meal. My
I
point is not because you have one meal, like let's say supper, that you're gonna have only 1,000 calories. You're
I
not gonna
would
make it.
I guess the problem for me is always when we start introducing this word calories to
Yeah.
the story because it's unnecessary.
Mm.
You should eat until satiation.
Yeah.
Right? And if you eat until satiation, the chance that you're only gonna have 1,000 calories to me is very low.
Yeah.
Right? But the flip side of the coin is if you end up having 1,000 calories, I'm gonna play this game for a minute.
Okay.
Is it possible that you're having that because you've just got that much energy on you that you need to use? So like there's a possibility that you could have a meal that's totally satisfying and you're satiated and you stop eating because there's actually energy that your body wants to pull from here. Will that be the case forever? No, right? Like
Okay.
at some point you will eat the energy that you need to keep your system going forward.
So better to eat one meal that gets you satiated than having 3, 4 meals that just like scrubbing the surface, like a little salad for lunch and like 2 eggs for breakfast, and where you like still hungry all day long.
I'm gonna flip that around for you and just put the other side of the story because I want people to understand this. How often does it happen that we eat meals that are 2,500 calories, 3,000 calories, and
Yeah.
right? Like it's not about the calorie count. Although yes, when I put my stuff in, I see the calorie count. Like it's there, but it's not about the calorie count. It's about eating to satiation, right? And like yes, there are certain things that are small and dense that you will be able to get through before the signal from your body says, hey, wow, stop eating. It doesn't mean that I'm chasing that amount of calories either. Every day for me is different depending on what I end up putting on my plate. But the number that I pay attention to is carbohydrates,
Yeah.
right? Like I do not go over my carbohydrate number. So if the meal I made happens to have a lot of carbohydrates in it, it's probably going to be a much smaller meal versus the other meals that I have lower amount of carbohydrates are bigger meals.
So the other idea I had is about snacking. So even if you're doing 24 and you have a 4 hours feeding window, instead of having a little snack before your meal at hour number 1 and your meal at hour number 3 and 4, you should even like it would be beneficial to compress that and having your little snack as a dessert if you can make it, or have your meal earlier in your feeding window, right? Because you're gonna break you're gonna break your fast. You see what I'm going? Like I'm just thinking about snacking. I see all those questions about like little snacks and people wants like
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. If you're actually trying to live a healthy ketogenic lifestyle, snacking goes to the side. There's no more snacking. So now the question becomes, well, what do I do when I'm hungry?
eat a
Eat a
meal.
meal. So here's the thought process that I want everyone to put their mind around. Every time I eat, my insulin rises. Insulin rises are cumulative, so they add on top of each other. And it's only when I stop eating and I get into my fasting window so the insulin is coming down, right? So it's slowly coming down after each meal, but it only really drops significantly when I'm in that fasting window. So even if I only have 2 meals a day, so if I eat my meal, have a snack, and then eat my meal, that's 3 insulin rises instead of 2. So now here's what I want you to think about though, because maybe I'm eating breakfast and then I'm eating lunch and then I'm eating supper. That's 3 insulin rises. But then I start to go between breakfast and trying to get to supper. Do I have a snack in there? And my question to you is, well, is it possible that you just tried to get there too fast, right? Because what are you going to snack on? So Now all of a sudden it becomes really important. What are you snacking on? Because, like it's less scary to me if you tell me you're snacking on something that's mostly fat than if you're snacking on something that's mostly carb. So if you tell me that you're going to have something that's mostly fat, it's still raising your insulin, but less
But
dangerous,
okay.
right? But I would still want you to consider something else. What about just shortening that window?
Mm.
So what about, rather than breakfast, snack, supper, what if I push breakfast back as far as I can to make it so I'm having breakfast, lunch, supper, breakfast, lunch, supper, and I push my breakfast back until it stops making sense to have breakfast anymore. And now I'm just having lunch, supper.
Yeah, but it will naturally happen because most people on the keto lifestyle, that's what's happening because you eat less carb and you eat more, you eat the same amount of protein, but you eat more fat. So
You eat the
it's
same amount of
more,
fat
yeah,
typically too. Like you shouldn't be
yeah.
upping your fat. You should be eating the same amount of fat.
But instead of the lean cut of meat, you're gonna go with the fatty cut of meat. Like
Yes.
you have to
In all fairness,
yeah,
standard Canadian diet,
yeah.
was I ever touching a lean piece of meat? I mean, I'm just being
Uh,
honest.
okay.
I was never touching a lean piece of
No.
meat.
Mm.
Right? Chicken, I had the
The
chicken
legs, yeah.
the
The
chicken
legs.
thigh. Like I never touched it. Like I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So like
True.
people like, oh yeah, yeah, I was never doing that.
Mm.
So I don't know how many of you out there are like me. Put it in the comments. Were
Okay.
you actually eating lean meat all the time?
Mm.
Because I can guarantee you I was not. And guess what? The best tasting part of that pork chop is that
The
fat.
fatty part, yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was always my story.
Okay, then the story is more like since you're eating less carb, you're not triggering your insulin as high, and you're not triggering the hunger as much. Because like for me, it was that like in the morning I was getting up and was not feeling. I'm like still not feeling hungry. Sometimes I'm gonna have lunch, but like breakfast is something that's always skipped.
So here's the other question for you to think about. Are you trying to fast? Or is it just that that's when you're hungry? Because like I mean, in all fairness, like just putting this out there for you to think about. Like for me, I do one meal a day for two reasons. It's when I get hungry, but also it's convenient.
Mm.
Like in my work building, there's no cafeteria or place that I could get a decent something to eat. Like for me, and at the beginning when I started keto, I was bringing a meal with me, right? I have a microwave. But first of all, do I really want to cook a meal to bring with me because lazy? And second of all, like it's so much more convenient for me to eat one meal. So that's what I do, right? Now, am I saying everybody out there has to do this? No. But the benefit to me is that, yes, I end up having a period of time that I'm fasting that I'm seeing beneficial results from because it's happening, not because I'm forcing it to happen.
Mm.
And in all fairness, for example, on the weekend, or if when we go on trips and whatever, if I'm hungry, I'm not gonna not eat because I'm doing one meal. No, I'm gonna eat. So it's a matter of like what makes sense. But my day just so happens it works out. It makes sense for me to have supper. When I am home with the kids and with you, supper is the meal that we all have together, right? I mean, like the chance that all three of our kids sit down and have lunch at the same time doesn't even happen. The two boys eat whenever, my daughter eats whenever. Like they don't eat at the same time because they don't get up at the same time. They don't have breakfast at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So, but supper is the time that we all come together. But you need to do what makes sense.
But that's really important for you wellness warriors, because I know like in the comments, say, oh, about our family, I want to have supper with my family. Like you said, it's important to eat when you're hungry. So if you try to do one meal a day, you eat, for example, one night at 6, and the other day you're hungry at 3, eat your meal at 3. Like how many times have I like had supper with my boys, but I didn't eat? Like I'm not hungry. I'm gonna stay with them. Like we're gonna talk about their day, how it when that's cool. But I'm not hungry. I'm maybe I'm gonna eat a little bit later. That's a possibility, but it is important to eat when you're hungry.
As a matter of fact, on those weekends when I fast, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm sitting down with you guys and I'm drinking water or drinking a coffee, and you guys are eating. And we're chatting and we're laughing and whatever. And it's like it's about being together. It's not about me putting food in my mouth, right? And I feel like this is another thing that I find frustrating when people say, "Oh, I have to eat with the family."
No, you don't.
You being there
Mm.
and being part of it. Yes, but do I need to eat? I'll go back in my history because I remember this. I remember that my dad used to get up in the morning with us for breakfast before school. My dad works, he's a chef, so late nights, right? But he would wake up in the morning and come out to the kitchen and sit with us at breakfast time. I think mostly to make sure we didn't give my mom a hard time, but to sit with us during breakfast time and make sure we have all our homework and our whatever. And he would sit at the table while we were eating, and he was not eating. Why? He just got up and he wasn't hungry, right? His breakfast is going to be later because when we leave, he went back to bed, right? Because he got home at what time? It wasn't about eating with us. It was about being with us. It was about helping my mom out because she needed to get us ready in the morning. So it was being there to make sure, yes, we ate. Yes, we got our homework and our school books and blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
Right? But he wasn't eating. So I think we have to put down this idea that the food is the thing. The food isn't the thing. Your presence is the thing. This is why I say when people invite you out, it's not because they want to see you put food in your mouth. They want to see you, right? They want you to be there. And recently, we went out to eat with your family, and I didn't eat anything. And I mean, yes, your aunt or cousin or whoever that woman who was across from me asked me if I wasn't going to eat. I said, no, I'm not hungry. I usually only eat once a day. She said, okay. And the conversation continued, right? I sat at the table, we chatted, I drank my drink, and we left. No big deal. Because why am I going to eat if I'm not hungry? It's a waste of a meal that I'm not actually going to enjoy when I'm not hungry.
Let's talk about those longer fasts for maybe like you're feeling ready to do a longer fast, because I remember I think we did it twice, like maybe the second time 3 days, the first were like we make it to 4 or 5 days. I remember it was scary for me, like the idea of not having food. We know we have like the fat on our bodies to last how many months, but the idea of not having food for just like 2 3 days, it's like your body is scared, like just at that idea, when in the end it was not that hard.
Your body was scared or your brain was
My
scared?
brain, no, my brain was scared. Yeah, my
Okay.
brain was scared. Like it's something like you need to be like you need to be committed to do it, but it's just like there is some scary thought like that. I was even surprised I had, like I was like committed. I say, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that with you, like, but like food. The first like 24 hours is like you're not hungry, but your brain wants food.
So maybe I'm going to add this because like that wasn't my experience. But
That
so
was
what
mine.
why I'm going to add this is I'm going to say this. What I said earlier about not forcing yourself to fast. Like that whole idea of going for breakfast, lunch, supper, to pushing breakfast back, like allowing myself to eat breakfast when I first get hungry, so pushing breakfast back. And then of course at some point breakfast and lunch doesn't make sense, so then I have, because that's what I did. Right? Like I went into the whole story with like, okay, first my breakfast fell away, and then eventually my lunch fell away because by the time I'm having lunch, it's like, okay, well, supper's around the corner. Like it stopped making sense. So when you get to that point where you're having one meal a day and you've done it in a natural way that feels comfortable, and it was just like, like, then the idea of doing a 48-hour fast isn't that scary, which is what I did. So maybe part of the reason that you were scared is because I had already done a 48-hour fast and maybe even longer fast before you jumped in and say you want to do a fast. But like my first 48-hour fast, like I wasn't scared. It was like, oh, I'm gonna not eat, and when I get hungry, I'm gonna eat, right? So and it turned out to be 48 hours before I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna have supper tonight. But like if it would have been 36 hours, I wouldn't have been mad, right? Like I would have just eaten. But and the same thing with me for my week-long fast that I tried. Like I went into it fully believing I could do the week. I never made a week, right?
Yeah.
Like 5 days later, my stomach and my brain was saying, Violet, eat something. So Violet ate something. And I tried that more than once. I never made it to the week. So there's a part where I want you guys to be realistic with yourselves. If your body is saying get food, right?
But maybe there's a difference between your body and your brain. Like you have maybe to do that difference, not
Oh, sure.
at the same time, not
Sure.
be scared about this adventure, but like listening to your body, not your mind that's telling you to get food.
100% agree with that. Like during the time that I was fasting, I had water, and like I would be drinking my water, and like so the 5-day fast, when I realized, because I was aiming at 7, why I ended up eating was because I'm drinking my water and it wasn't doing anything for, like, like when you're fasting and you drink some water, if it's just a mind thing, the water just kind of, and you're not hungry anymore, right? Like it kind of comes and goes. But like when you're fasting and it's time for food, and you first of all you drink water, the hungry's still there. But the other thing that I would say happens is that you it's more than just hungry. Like it's hungry.
Mm.
And it's more than just like I remember my head was started I was having trouble like thinking. So I was like, kind of like say something and be like, "What? What?" Yeah,
So,
when that's happening, you get food,
yeah.
right? Like this is no time to
Mm.
play games, right? Like so I do feel like we want to be realistic with ourselves, but pay attention to your body.
Mhm.
Your body's going to tell you when you need food. It's the flip side of the coin too. I never eat until I'm hungry. Like even till today, if you see me like at home, like if you guys would be with me like on a weekend, you'll see that my first coffee happens when I get hungry. Like, so that first little signal says, and I'll drink some coffee. Why? Because I know I'm not actually hungry. But that's the first little, my brain is going to give me that, hey, you want to get something? Now, if I were to drink that coffee and like 5 minutes later I'm hungry, I would go make a meal. Because that means I was actually hungry and it wasn't like I needed something to drink or whatever. So, like, are you listening to yourself? Right. And for sure, I never, when I feel that little hungry thing happen, I never have a diet soda, diet anything,
Yeah.
because that's going to push you to eat that sweet.
Yeah.
Is going to happen.
Okay.
But like, yeah, you need to be honest with yourself.
Mm.
You have to
You need
listen.
to listen. Yeah.
Your brain is not going to tell you to get food if it
Mm.
didn't need real food. So like if you drink some water and then your brain is still pushing for food, chances are you need food.
So there's better reasons to fast than for weight loss. You probably want to do it for health first, and some weight control, maybe. Like I've seen videos that are talking about that. It's a good weight control option, but more for health.
Okay, I want to put this question to you because you're talking about weight loss for weight control. Yourself, can you imagine that you're just gonna like be hungry and not eat because you're trying to lose weight?
No, yeah, no, of course not.
And
That
that's
was
the
my
part that gets me, right?
yeah.
When people say they're going to do fasting for weight control, the same way that you're not going to put down sugar for weight control, if you're actually hungry, you're going to eat. And so when you start fasting for weight control versus fasting is great for keeping your insulin under control.
Yeah.
Right? Fasting is great for resetting yourself but it's done alongside eating properly. Right? Because when you do it that way, you're not hungry.
Yeah.
So fasting for weight control, oof,
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that one because as soon as you get hungry, you're going to eat.
Don't set yourself a goal. Be reasonable and listen to your body along that journey to that goal, because you might not get to it, but like what you did is good anyway. Like you have to be satisfied with what you did. Like if you made it 3 days out of your goal of 5 days, then it's good.
But yes, I agree with that. Be happy with whatever you do. But I'm going to add to that, rather than trying to put a goal of fasting, how about eat to satiation and then allow time between? So only eat again when you're hungry.
Oh, okay.
And if you're eating a low carbohydrate way of eating, the time between those meals is going to elongate naturally.
I've seen a carnivore video, I think, that I watched with you, like where the dude was eating to satiation, but like that was probably like 2 or 3 pounds of meat, but he was eating every 3 days. Like that meat like helped him go to like 3 days. So he was eating every 3 days.
But you see, but that
So,
makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Because if he's satiated after that much food and then doesn't eat again until he's hungry, then and it takes him 3 days. So then, I mean, honestly, I feel like he's eating the way we used to eat back in the day, right?
Yeah,
That you would have
yeah,
caught
yeah,
some
true.
animal, you would have eaten the animal, and then you would have been hunting, right? Till you catch another animal. The only difference is he's not hunting; he's going to the fridge.
Yeah.
But like it's a way of eating that actually makes sense.
Mhm.
So yeah, I could see that too. Like I'm concerned about people setting themselves up and then when if you fail, being mad at yourself and then getting into poor habits that are difficult to sustain. Like eating to satiation and eating when hungry is so easy to sustain. And if that's happening on a 24 schedule, if it's happening on a 16-8 schedule, or if it's happening on one meal a day schedule, it's still better than eating every 4 hours, right? And you will still get benefits. This is the other thing. You know what? Yes, is it ideal to do a 16-hour fast? That's ideal. But if I'm doing 12 hours every single day, Am I getting benefit from that? Yes, I am. Is it better for me to do 16 hours, like what the doctors want us to do? Yes. How are you accomplishing that? Because even to do 12 hours, that means I ate on a 16/8, right? Let's think about that for a second. So if I'm doing 16 hours, that means I'm eating on a 24.
Mm.
And if I'm doing 24 hours, that means I'm eating one meal a day. Sorry, if I'm eating 20 hours, doing 20 hours, one meal a day. So how are we allowing ourselves to see this and see it in a way that's sustainable,
Mm.
right? Because one meal a day for how many, for 2 years now?
Mm-hmm. More like 24.
So you're doing a 24
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
for
little
over a
five.
year now. So it's like it's sustainable
Mm.
if you want it to be sustainable and if you allow yourself to eat well.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition, Teespring, Patreon, in the description below. We love making these videos for you guys, and I really can't wait to talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.